Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, Wimbledon 2024 second round. I wasn't supposed to be here recording this right now. The original plan was that I would do a show at the conclusion of the second round. What happened? Why did I have to change my plan? I'll tell you what happened. Too much. Too much happened on day 3 at Wimbledon, Wednesday at the All England Club, where I get done watching the tennis and I'm looking at my notes and I'm thinking, I have 45 minutes at least, and I don't know how long I'm going to go, but I have that kind of amount of material right now. And I looked up and down the list and it's like, I would want to cover all of this. I wouldn't want to get rid of any of it. And I don't really feel like doing a 2-hour show tomorrow on the 4th of July. Happy 4th, everybody. Not everybody. Happy 4th to some who celebrate. So essentially, I am here doing a show, and then I'll do another show tomorrow based on whatever goes down on Thursday. All right. What are we going to cover? We are going to do Sinner Berrettini. That's going to be first up. That was kind of the headliner of the day coming in. And then there were some matches that I didn't know were going to be as good as they ended up being, such as Daniil Medvedev against Alexandre Muller. That was a tight 4-setter. All 4 sets were competitive. Medvedev comes through. We have an upset on the women's side. Naomi Osaka is out. Emma Navarro takes her out. We'll talk about that. Casper Ruud, upset alert in the pre-tournament predictions. Not a bold one, although his draw was as good as he could have asked. Well, he still doesn't navigate his way through it. Fabio Fognini beats Casper Ruud in 4 sets. Tommy Paul, 5-setter. He almost went out. My quarterfinal pick against Otto Virtanen. And then we'll do some quick hitters, like 3-sentence, some other matches. That'll be at the end. All right, let's start with Sinner and Berrettini. This played out pretty much as a best case for Berrettini. I thought this was a good showing for Matteo, despite Jannik getting through. And I'm kind of watching the match, and I'm thinking, especially based on how the third set went, I think Sinner's going to win this in 4. And then I'm kind of going through in my head all the big Matteo Berrettini matches at majors in recent history. I'm saying to myself, haven't they all kind of felt like this? Haven't they all been sort of competitive, close, but at the same time, I can't think of an epic. I can't think of Berrettini being in a winning position. So then I go back and look, and I filter by Matteo Berrettini playing top 5 opponents at majors. It turns out he has played essentially this exact match 6 times in a row now. There have been 6 Matteo Berrettini matches against top 5 opponents in a row. He has lost all 6, never in straight sets, never in 5 sets, every single time in 4. That's the Roland Garros quarterfinal against Djokovic in 2021, the Wimbledon final against Djokovic in 2021, the U.S. Open quarterfinal against Novak Djokovic in 2021. And then we have the Nadal semi in 2022, where it was the third set that he won, and the Alcaraz 4th round match at Wimbledon last year. Another 4-set win for Alcaraz. So Matteo, this is kind of the range. This is what he's been able to produce against these top players at slams. He does it again, which doesn't really surprise me because I've been saying for a long time now that Matteo Berrettini is like, I saw him in Phoenix, his first tournament back, and he wasn't quite there, but he was pretty darn close. And it had me thinking, okay, this guy's going to be ready to go really soon. It's not going to take him that long to build up. And I think that's been the case. So, I came into Wimbledon. I had him power ranked 8th. Do I think that is pretty accurate in hindsight after watching the match against Sinner? I do. I think 8, where he was power ranked, is probably just about right. What was the difference in the match? Let's start there. There was one shot that completely jumped off for me by Jannik Sinner. There's one thing that he was doing in the match that had me saying, wow, over and over and over again. Because in the big picture, as we'll get into, I don't think this was some sort of spectacular performance by Sinner. In fact, if I were to grade his level on a curve of what he normally produces, I would call it a little bit below average. But not when it comes to the return to serve. Not when it comes to the ability that Jannik Sinner displayed to return Matteo Berrettini's big, bad first serve. I think the stats might be just a little bit misleading, not all that misleading, because Berrettini wins 71% of first serve points, which for Matteo on grass at Wimbledon, it's not all that high. It's a pretty good stat for Sinner. Sinner won 82% of his first serves. That's 11 percentage points higher. But I also think that sometimes the stats wouldn't really do it justice because it was in crunch time. It was in the tie breaks where Jannik's return shone most brightly. First set tie break, I have 4 great returns by Sinner in the tie break. I have a stab return that was a completely defensive return, ended up leading to a missed Berrettini overhead. I have a return at 2-3 that found Berrettini's backhand. I have a return at 2-4 that was deep down the middle and made Berrettini miss a forehand where he was kind of falling backwards. And I think that's one of the big things to watch is Berrettini's body weight, because there is an enormous difference between Berrettini's +1 forehand when his weight is centered or even moving forward through the ball, and when he's doing the whole lean backwards thing, which frankly he maybe, I don't know. I would actually, I'm not positive about this. I think there's a chance that he submits to kind of leaning backwards when he's moving backwards a little bit too easily. I don't know if he can find a way to maybe get kind of behind the ball a little bit quicker and then to try to maintain a more neutral balance on his +1 forehand. Because when Sinner was able to land that deep return, oftentimes what we would see is fade away Berrettini. So he'd be hitting off of his right leg, and all of his balance was going backwards. And sometimes Berrettini can still hit a pretty big forehand off of his back foot like that. But anyway, that was the 2-4 return. So you have 2 returns in a row there that are excellent, that lead to mini breaks. And then if you look at the set point, what was the return? It was not all that strong, but it went to Berrettini's backhand. So what did Matteo do? He hit a slice approach. And what do we know about slice approaching in the modern game? Usually it gives you a decent chance at a passing shot. Sinner hit the pass, backhand on the line, forced the volley error, and that was the first set. I got 4 great returns there in a 9-point tiebreak. Berrettini didn't have that many service points. So that was a dominant returning performance. And then I go to the 4th set tiebreak. I have the first mini break at 2-3, a serve that Berrettini hit that I just don't think anybody would have been able to really get back other than Sinner, prime Djokovic, prime Murray. It was a perfect serve, and Sinner was able to make the stick save. The return goes really high in the air, but Berrettini ends up having to hit a runaround forehand from way off the court. He knows it has to be a winner or he's screwed, and he tries to make it too good, and he misses a forehand wide. That looked like a pretty poor unforced error, and frankly it was, but the return never should have come back in the first place if not for Sinner's excellence. 4-3. This is a second serve return, so it's not quite what I'm talking about, but a Berrettini... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wrong about that. I'm looking at something else. 4-6, though, the match point, obviously a stifling return at Berrettini's feet to force the error. I thought there was a lot of that throughout the match. It's so illuminating to see how Matteo in particular, same thing for Felix and some of the serve +1 guys, in conditions such as Wimbledon, where they can go through 98% of the field without really having to worry especially in big moments when they land their first serve, without having to worry about hitting first ball backhands or baseline half volleys because the ball is landing at their feet. And then you go up against that top 1% of returners, and it's just a different ball game, and you're going to have to win from neutral if you're that lucky, because a lot of the times with that, deep middle return, you're unable to even land the +1. So Sinner's return to me is the difference. Don't let the stats fool you. I know that this wasn't a break fest, but I'll get into why this wasn't a break fest. I'll get into why Sinner wasn't, breaking Berrettini's serve left and right. Because you might say, why is Gill so enthralled by the return of serve? Because there weren't that many breaks. Well, I'll tell you why. Berrettini was hanging in there from the baseline. Matteo, I don't have rally length statistics. I wish I did. I think they'd be pretty even in rallies that spanned over 5 shots. I did not think that Sinner was able to create the advantage that you would expect him to create in those neutral baseline rallies. And I think Jannik made a tactical error. And rarely in the last 8 months have I disagreed with Sinner's tactics. And Darren Cahill is, to me, a clear and obvious, I'll be conservative here, top 5 coach in the world. And Simone Vagnozzi seems awesome himself. I know Simone is a little bit more technical, and Darren is a little bit more tactical. I know that that's kind of one of the ways they run their partnership. But anyway, Sinner, tactical error from the baseline, in my opinion. Too much peppering the Berrettini backhand side. Not enough respect for the slice backhand of Berrettini, which was really effective in this match. Partially because, credit to Matteo, he's got a great backhand slice. But also, I think Jannik let him get too comfortable hitting it, camping in his backhand corner, and Jannik was kind of doing that 65% ground strokes into Berrettini's backhand side, maybe even hovering around 70%, I would say. And it's a lot of just stationary, easy balls into Berrettini's backhand. And it's like, what are we accomplishing here? He's not going to miss that many slice backhands. And he has such a good slice that what is Matteo going to do? He's going to hit that nice backhand slice cross court and probe for an opportunity to hit a big forehand. And he's probably going to get that opportunity to hit a big forehand if you keep going cross court into his backhand. He's going to find that runaround. So I thought Matteo had way too many comfortable backhand slices in these baseline exchanges. And I thought he had way too many runaround forehands, which is when he's at his most dangerous. What I think Sinner needed to do, and I think he figured it out midway through the 4th set, hit big into Berrettini's forehand. Make him move to his right into his forehand. And we've talked about this with Djokovic. We've talked about it in the Berrettini matchup. We've also talked about it in the Tsitsipas matchup. By the way, I think it's more important against Berrettini than Tsitsipas. Doing it against Tsitsipas is hard in a lot of ways because you're dealing with such a mobile player that you might hit a decent ball into Tsitsipas's forehand and he might move to his right and still hurt you. Berrettini, yeah, the forehand is big, but he's not as quick, so it's easier to put him under pressure. Not to mention, I don't think Tsitsipas has a backhand, off clay at least, that is as effective as Berrettini's slice on grass. So it's even more essential, I think, in this head-to-head that you actually make Matteo run to his forehand side. You're going to get more errors that way because Matteo goes very big when he hits running forehands. You're going to make the points athletic. That's what Jannik wants. He's the more mobile of the two. Let's get moving. Let's make these points choppy. When you have those linear, predictable, kind of pepper the backhand points, Matteo is not moving. And ideally also, you find some chances to approach the backhand. You open up space to that side, you find chances to approach the backhand. That is where Berrettini is usually in real trouble. If you can hit a good approach to his backhand, he's not going to be able to pass you. Because that slice, that's such a great weapon on grass, it's not a good passing shot. Sometimes he makes it work, but not usually. All right? Now, the other part of it from the baseline is Sinner wasn't completely dialed in. Not hitting as clean as he can. I actually think Jannik's passing shots were subpar on several occasions. Obviously, if you watch the highlights, you're gonna catch some excellent Jannik Sinner passing shots. But I think on a regular basis, there was a shocking number of Sinner passes that were badly mistimed and either missed wide or ended up going right at Berrettini because Sinner just didn't have the confidence or the ability to square up the ball and hit close to the sideline. And there just weren't he wasn't producing a ton of wow moments off the ground. So there was a certain timidness to Sinner's baseline game for a lot of the match. And that also contributed to Berrettini hanging from the baseline in combination with the fact that Matteo did get good purchase out of his first serve. As good as Sinner returned, there are going to be some that are just impossible. Nobody's going to return a perfect Berrettini first serve. So that's why Matteo was in the match. But in the tie breaks, the Sinner return kind of went up to a 10. And I also thought in the fourth set tie break, I want to give Sinner credit for largely, I think, correcting the tactical error that he was committing from the baseline. And if you look at, for example, the 5-3 point, Sinner has a backhand kind of from the middle of the court that I think throughout the match he was just trading cross court, and he ripped it kind of down the line, but it was almost an off backhand because he was, again, towards the middle of the court with a lot of margin, and he forced an error, and Berrettini just wasn't ready for it at all. He was totally leaning left, assuming that, okay, Sinner has a neutral ball. He's just going to try to get it into my backhand because he's just looking for a ball to attack off the backhand, off of my backhand. And Berrettini did a good job of not surrendering that ball to attack, which I've already gone over. So I'll move on. But I just want to say that Sinner, through 2 rounds, a little bit below average, maybe feeling the pressure somewhat of being the favorite. Maybe not. Maybe it's just, it happens. He can't always be sharp as attack. And when I say below average, I'm grading him on a curve. I'm talking about what he's usually produced this year, where I thought, again, the ball striking wasn't as consistent and clean, and even the decision-making had some lapses, and the second serve returning, which is usually one of Sinner's strengths, had some bad moments in this match. But at the end of the day, it's about winning. It's about getting through, and you cannot possibly get negative when Jannik has a nightmare draw in the second round in Matteo Berrettini. And Matteo, I think, did his thing, basically played his normal level, at least to my eyes, and Sinner was able to come through with the victory. Let's go to Medvedev. Daniil Medvedev beating Alexandre Muller. So I've actually watched quite a bit of Alexandre Muller. I've called some of his matches. I saw him in person at Phoenix. And what I would have told you about Muller, if you asked Coach Gill for a scouting report, I would have said, get ready to play a lot of long rallies. He's ultra consistent. He's pretty fit. His movement isn't going to wow you, but he's going to stay in good defensive position behind the baseline, very even off of both wings. You can't really tell what's weaker, forehand, backhand. It's almost like they're the same, and he doesn't miss a lot of balls. He's very tough in that way. That's what I would have told you. And I'll be honest, I missed the first set because there was a lot of other stuff going on. And I see that Muller won the first set. So now I flip on the match, which is, by the way, a lot of people question why I cover this match, why I didn't cover this match, or how I consume Wimbledon in the early rounds. When top players are in trouble, that's always going to get me to watch. So some people at Roland Garros, for example, were really pissed off that I didn't cover Ruud. And this has happened with other players in the past. I think Australian Open, people were really pissed off that I didn't cover Sinner. It's like, well, if you play boring matches because you win in straights, because you do your job and you play great, there are other things that might steal my attention, such as Alexander Zverev playing 1,000,000 5-setters in the second round, right? And now I'm going to cover that. Like, that's how this works. So I just wanted to say that as an aside. Okay. So I see that Muller won the first set, and I think, okay, what did he just out-solid Daniil? I look at the stats. Doesn't look that way. Winners, 11-6, Muller. Alexander also 10 out of 12 at the net. And then I start watching the second set, and it confirms what the stat sheet hinted at. There was, first of all, tons of backhand slice for Muller, really avoiding giving Daniil an opportunity to hit out at his backhand by keeping the ball low with that slice. Tons of +1. Muller loved the wide serve, the +1 approach into the open court. So good on grass against Medvedev because it's difficult for him to take a good angle at the ball, and he ends up striking that passing shot from really low contact points more often than not. Medvedev ended up moving back in the second set. The commentators tipped me off that Daniil actually started the match up on return. And what do you know? As soon as Medvedev moved back, Muller mixed in serve and volley. Muller was also just hitting bigger from the back of the court and going down the line more and taking more time away. So everything about Muller's game was more proactive than I've ever seen from him. And it speaks to a couple of things. One, well done, Alexandre Muller. That's the right way to play Daniil Medvedev. But two, and I've kind of covered this a lot over the years, Medvedev has built a reputation. And you get players like Alexandre Muller who are, they know they are the inferior player. They know there is a way to give yourself a better chance against Medvedev. And even if that is outside of your comfort zone, you have a lot of players like Alexandre Muller who are willing to give these things a try. And Muller did that, and he executed it really well. I was impressed with how well he volleyed. I didn't know his backhand slice was so good. He went big down the line with his forehand. It was awesome. It was great. Now, that said, while Muller played amazing, I was getting the sense that Medvedev was almost letting him do so, because I couldn't think of one way that Daniil was inflicting discomfort on his opponent. I didn't see any of that. Damage, again, was not coming easily to Daniil. Mid-court finishing wasn't there. The big groundies, the speed off the ground wasn't there at all. The serve, better than it's been at its low points this year, but not a dominant force in the match. So if Medvedev isn't hitting big off the ground, is struggling to kind of come forward and finish off of short ball opportunities, isn't really dominating with his first serve, then how is he disrupting his opponent? He's not. And that's how I felt about the first two sets by and large. However, when push came to shove, Medvedev found himself in some precarious situations down the stretch in the second set. Looked like he might go down 2-0. In fact, he faced a pair of set points against him in two separate games, mind you. Daniil was very courageous, fending off both of them. A pair of +1 approach shots. One of them he forced an error on. The other he finished a volley. His serve also gave him quite a bit of help in the second set tiebreak, which was good to see from a Medvedev perspective. Credit where credit is due for Daniil finding some courage in those big spots and finding a serve in that tiebreak. But then, third set, it's not as if Daniil was liberated by getting a set on the scoreboard and the match changed in complexion, which I thought might happen because that often happens in Daniil Medvedev matches. Sometimes the beginning is kind of a war, kind of a dogfight, and then the opponent wilts under the constant pressure. That did not happen in this match because Medvedev ended up having a grind in the third set too. At 4-5, Muller was serving. It was a competitive set up until this point. And Medvedev, I think, saw the scoreboard pressure, went into lockdown mode. Muller missed 3 attacking backhands. His serve ends up getting broken. That's how Daniil ends up going up 2-1. And then in the fourth set, it was another competitive set. Daniil still couldn't create separation. He still couldn't pull away. And ultimately, his counter-punching shot-making came alive in the nick of time. Huge winner return off of a serve and volley. A forehand that Medvedev hit on the dead run, which was shockingly fast and deep and caught Muller off guard to force the error. There was a double fault, no unforced error in there from Muller, and he ends up breaking serve at the very end of the fourth set to win it, I believe, 7-5. Yeah, 7-5 in the fourth. But mainly, I felt in order for Medvedev to win, he had to grind Muller down, make him tired, and hope to win the battle of errors. That was sort of Daniil's path, his edge. And I'm of the opinion that Medvedev shouldn't have to win that way to beat Muller. I would contend that it's the kind of thing that Daniil is trying to get away from. And it's the kind of thing that is going to cost him against better players. He's going to have to do more. He's going to have to be more imposing, or he's not going to be the top player at Wimbledon this year. To see all four sets look like that were kind of concerning. Because, again, it's one thing if Medvedev starts the match out that way and it looks that way for two sets and then he finds it. Medvedev never found it. So I was not encouraged by what I saw by Medvedev edging out Alexandre Muller, despite feeling that the Frenchman deserves a ton of credit for playing some of the best ball that I've ever seen him play. You also have this weird court one center court thing going on for Medvedev. I mean, what the heck is this? I mean, Medvedev, it's like the dog meme. You have the muscular dog, court one Medvedev, and then you have the little puppy. That's center court Medvedev. It's like a different player. So I don't know if that trend is going to persist, but it's a strange one, and it's one that you should have on your radar. Emma Navarro beats Naomi Osaka, who came into Wimbledon feeling probably a little bit more inspired than she has off of overperformance in the second round against Iga Swiatek at Roland Garros. And I think Wim Fizet, her coach, said that Naomi has reached a phase of her career where she's ready to compete for all four majors, not just the two hardcourt slams. Well, Navarro reigns on that party, ridiculously clean sheet for Emma, where she makes 5 unforced errors in the match. 1 double fault, 4 on her forehand, 0 on her backhand. So she didn't really miss, and her movement was great in all directions. And one of the things I really love about Emma Navarro, and I think it's a little bit too rare on the women's tour, is not only does she move side to side well, she moves backwards well. She's willing to cede some court position against a power player like Osaka so that she's able to maximize her court coverage, so that she's able to give herself an extra beat to absorb the kind of pace that Osaka is delivering. And I think there are a lot of WTA players who feel that it's very important in their game to take time away. And as a result, they're not really willing to move back and become a backboard. But Emma Navarro was in this match. She absorbed pace brilliantly, and she was able to stay out of trouble with her depth and her movement. Look, if Osaka gets something weak, she's great. She's going to clobber the ball. You're going to be in big trouble, particularly on grass. But that's where Navarro was so good in this match, keeping the ball deep, covering the court well, hitting strong balls on the run. I mean, she moves very fluently, and she's the kind of player when she's stretched out, when she's at the end of her range, everything still looks pretty under control. Meanwhile, on the other side of the net, you kind of have the opposite thing going. I think Osaka really struggled to absorb any quality that was coming in. She's standing on top of the baseline, like very aggressive court position, and she's unable to really explode laterally on the grass. So her movement is clearly not super explosive. So you have, east-west, she's not moving all that well. But I don't even think that was the most important thing for Navarro and for Osaka in this match, because a lot of the times Navarro wasn't even pushing Osaka east-west. She was going straight through the middle. And to me, Osaka looked rushable, and she looked very susceptible to getting beaten by depth very susceptible. The deep middle stuff was bothering her. Navarro forced a lot of errors into very central targets. And that's essentially how I would sum up the match. Also, Osaka, from a serve standpoint, didn't quite dominate enough to keep her in the match at all. So that's one thing that maybe could have been her saving grace and just wasn't really quite happening. She was being forced to play baseline rallies. She wasn't able to win them very often based on the rock-solid performance from Emma, who I feel is a candidate to make the final, frankly, if you look at the bottom half. And I know that sounds bold. Emma Navarro, she's kind of come out of nowhere. She is not someone who's been talked about all that much, but she's 11th in the race. She's won on all surfaces. And I feel she's getting better really quickly. And that's where you need to look at someone who's 11th in the race and think, well, maybe in reality, she's more like, in terms of level, maybe she's more like 9th or 8th or 7th. And the bottom half is just open. So I think it's going to be an American, actually. I think it will likely be either Goff or Keys or Navarro. Who are the other big ones? I mean, you have Sakari here. You have Kasakina here. You have Paolini. Yeah. I know it sounds strange to say Emma Navarro might be in the final, but just look at the bottom half. I feel like if she's not the third favorite, I think she's the fourth. Let's go to Casper Ruud. Fabio Fognini ends up taking him out. I did not think that Fabio Fognini was going to win his first round match. I had Ruud playing Kupfer, but Kupfer withdrew due to injury. And then I'm actually blanking on who Fognini ended up having to beat in the first round as a result of that lucky loser development. Can I see that? Can you show me that? I'm on the Wimbledon website right now. Oh, yeah, there it is. Luca Van Asche. All right. But Fognini beats Ruud in 4. There's an argument to be made that it should have been 3. That the only thing that really helped Ruud here was the finish line nerves, that Fognini felt up a double break, 5-2 in the third, ended up losing his serve twice, losing the third set. By the way, I had a ton of trouble closing it out at 5-4 actually it was 5-3 in the fourth set as well, with even more match points coming and going. And as a result, it turns into a 4-setter. Here's what I want to highlight statistically in this match. Total points won was actually pretty close. And you can actually, if you really put a microscope on the match, you might be able to make a case that it was all about the big points and that Ruud was right there level-wise with Fognini, and it was about converting break opportunities, which Fognini was able to do and Ruud wasn't. You could make that argument. But the only reason why it was even that close was because Casper outserved Fognini handily. Fognini's serve these days, and I guess his serve was really never up to par with the best in the world. But Ruud was by far the better server. Let's take the serve out of the statistics for the purpose of this exercise. I want to get rid of aces and take that out of the winners count. And I want to get rid of double faults and take that out of the unforced errors count. Let's highlight what was happening between these two players when you take away the serve, winners to unforced errors. Well, winners was 51-33 for Fognini. Unforced errors was Ruud 45, Fognini 38. So that's 18 more winners for Fabio, 7 fewer unforced errors. Fognini was electric off the ground. He was timing the ball well. He was clobbering it. He was smacking it. And that was literally the difference. He was way more damaging with his ball striking than Casper Ruud was able to be. And Ruud's defense posed no threat to Fognini, who was drawing a lot of slice defense from Casper. And as I've pointed out in the past, particularly on the backhand, Ruud telegraphs his backhand slice when he's running to his left. He ends up floating that backhand slice, And Fognini was very, very good at coming in and knocking away volleys off of Ruud's slice defense. He was terrific at the net. And I'll tell you the stat right now. He was 32 for 44, 73% at the net. Do you think of Fognini as someone who should have that kind of success at net on that much of a frequent basis? No, but he was dictating the terms of the play, and Ruud's defense, well, yes, he covers the court pretty well. You have an opportunity to put volleys away. And Ruud, his ground strokes, they just don't penetrate enough. The backhand gets forced into slice too often. And I don't want to say he didn't adapt his game to grass, because he tried. He was aggressive off the backhand. It ended up just being kind of erratic on the backhand side, which is not what you want for Ruud. You want the backhand to be the rock. You want it to set up the forehand. And if Ruud is missing a lot on the backhand, it's a net negative on the court. The other thing I saw Casper do was try to come forward more often. The volley execution wasn't quite at the level that Fognini's was. I think Ruud left a lot of points on the table by just not volleying quite well enough. So it's kind of amazing just how bad it is with Ruud on grass. I'm about to actually defend him a little bit, so bear with me. Because the negative side of this, the ugly side of this is, Casper Ruud's a true anomaly when it comes to surface dependence in today's game with how bad he is on grass. You have a bona fide top 10 player whose game is so poisoned by this particular surface that he has lost now 4 events in a row on grass to players outside the top 90. 4 exits in a row to players outside 90. Can you think of another example where you have a bona fide consistent top 10 player, which Ruud is, if you look at the full body of work last 3 years, who has ever gone on a stretch like that, losing to players of that stature in the rankings? Can you ever? I mean, certainly don't give me Medvedev on clay, because there's no comparison there. None. Now, I do think there's reason to give Casper a little bit of a pass in 2024, more so than ever before. Definitely more so than last year. The whole scheduling thing, the fact that he didn't prepare much, there are 2 things going on. First of all, he did have an illness, and that should be said. I heard about it once. I was reminded about it today in my Twitter mentions. Something that went somewhat under the radar, because I'm not sure Ruud ever said it in English, but he said it to Danish media, where he got sick after Roland Garros. And it is possible that had Ruud planned to play the grass court, a grass court warm-up or a tune-up, he would have had to pull out anyway. That is possible. That should be said. Although I don't think he planned on doing that, which is more so the point. I think the larger defense for Ruud is that in an Olympic year, the whole argument that I had about Ruud's scheduling goes out the window. Because last year I said, be like everybody else, play Wimbledon lead-ins, train on grass, make an effort, and then take vacation after Wimbledon, instead of playing Bostad and Kitzbühel and events like that on clay after Wimbledon. Okay? Wimbledon is more important than those events. Let's get our priorities straight, right? Because you can do better on grass if you make an effort. And that was my take. That argument doesn't exist this year because you can't take off after Wimbledon. You have to go play the Olympics if you're Casper Ruud. And, you should want to play the Olympics. Casper has a chance to medal, certainly. And that's a big deal for Denmark. And honestly, if he were to medal, it would be like, if he were to win the gold, it would immediately become the biggest the biggest accomplishment in his career. Might as well avoid the whole feather in the cap cliche, huh? So that's why I go a little bit easier on Ruud this time. Last match that I'll go in depth on is Tommy Paul versus Otto Virtanen, who I have always called Virtanen, but the announcers, at least on ESPN, were saying Virtanen. So they're probably right because I don't think I've ever checked his pronouncer thing on the ATP website. I thought this was a phenomenal match. I think both guys should be really proud of their level. This was high quality. Tommy looked vulnerable from the start in this matchup because he doesn't serve as big as Otto Virtanen. He doesn't hit as big as Otto. So he has to be crafty offensively. He has to be ultra consistent. He has to win some points scrambling using his athleticism and potentially coming up with some high degree of difficulty shots to turn points around and to turn defense into offense. And let's be honest, this can be a little bit tougher to do on a consistent basis throughout 4 sets than let's hit some big serves and pop some big forehands. It's not a straightforward game that Tommy Paul has to play. It's not. And that can be hard, particularly on this surface where Virtanen's firepower is going to be so heavily rewarded. Paul did not have a great forehand day. And there were even moments on his backhand to me where he was making some errors, particularly through the first 3 sets, that he just can't make. And Otto was overbearing with his weapons. So Paul had to figure out a way. What did he do? Well, first let me give you a quote. This is what he said after the match. Quote, "I wouldn't say I played my best, but I made it tough for him." I think that's a good way to put it because what stood out about this Tommy Paul win were 2 words: heart, fitness. That's how we won this match. He did not outskill Otto Virtanen. He did not outclass Otto Virtanen in all that many ways, shot for shot for shot. Because shot for shot for shot, I don't think he could find an advantage, not today at least, because he didn't quite have it. But he went lockdown mode. He used his legs. He ran and ran and ran and ran, and he cut out all the errors. And Otto got tight in some big spots on his forehand. Paul's movement and his athleticism gives him an ability to kind of get away with more passive play than most because the court coverage, even on this surface, is just absurd sometimes. And most importantly, this was a Tommy Paul fitness win. Tommy Paul's fitness has not always been there, and he will be the first to tell you that. But it's there now. And when this match dragged past the 2 hours, 30 minutes mark, and Paul started making these rallies long and physical, Otto's legs just couldn't hang. They could not hold up. And Tommy, who was doing harder work and more of the running, he stayed strong. So this was about heart from Paul and fitness, and it's a gritty win against a dangerous opponent. And the draw is wide open for Paul, as I thought it would be. This is, he is in Casper Ruud's section. And this is why I picked him to the quarters. Okay, some quick hitters here just to end us off. Frances Tiafoe wins his second round match. He is serving really big. Biggest I've seen him serve since the U.S. Open last year. He beats Borna Coric 7-6, 6-1, 6-3. You look at that first set tiebreak, Frances hits 3 aces in it. And he just looks different to me. I think I said this on the mailbag, but he's unlocking his shot making and his athleticism. And a lot of it to me comes down to effort, defensive effort. Because when Frances is digging in, and this is what really stood out to me against Coric, first serves and scrambles. When Tiafoe is digging in and running hard and being stubborn to try to stay in points it looks like he's going to lose, he can be magical with not only the explosivity in his movement, but what he's able to do when he gets the ball with the pure racket talent that he possesses. Second quick hitter, tough loss for Felix. Went up 2-0 against Thanasi Kokkinakis. And he lost a few match points yesterday, Tuesday. Kokkinakis wins the 3rd set. The match is paused. They resume to play the 4th set today and the 5th set, and Thanasi comes away with the win. Felix lost either 4 or 5 match points. I forget which. But yesterday, or on the first day of the match, Felix a chance to close it out in straights and a chance to beat the darkness. And you could feel that it was a tense moment because I think that the fading sunlight was applying some extra pressure on Felix. I thought, uh-oh, this is pretty big for FAA because if he loses this third set, particularly if he loses it having held match points, they're going to come out tomorrow and Kokkinakis is going to be thinking, I just need to win 2 sets. It's a new day. I'm physically fresh, and it's going to be dangerous for Felix. What happens? Kokkinakis hit some good serves on on 2 of the match points. There were another 2 match points where FAA flat out choked forehands. He choked forehands. They were easy. They were there to be had. They were forehands from offensive winning positions that Felix missed. And I just didn't think he was going to win today. I didn't. I thought, despite him being up 2-1, he has a whole day to stew on the match points that he missed. There were bad vibes. The vibes were bad, and Felix couldn't overcome them. Last thing, Tomas Machac, my dark horse, somehow stays alive, despite going down 2-0 and being down 5-0 in the third set. I don't have much to say about this other than, wow. First time since I think the 90s. I think Wally Masur was involved in a 5-love comeback in a major. So incredible. I did go back because I wasn't watching the match, but I did go back and I watched it from 5-love, and it was rough from David Goffin. You know, there's no sugarcoating that. Machac was fine, but I'd be lying to you if I said that Tomas Machac was so spectacular, so unbelievable that his level was, deserving or inevitably he was going to rattle off 5 straight games. Goffin got very tight. He froze up. He had paralysis in his legs, and there were a lot of shanks, and it was not good. And it was sad to see that from Goffin. But Machac has to feel like he has a second lease on life because it is absolutely miraculous that he is still in the tournament based on the positions that he found himself in. That's all I got. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.